Dust storms rolled across the dying horizon, painting the sky a shade of copper that bled into the fading light, and in that lonely stretch between the mountains and the river where only rattlesnakes and broken men dared to linger, a cowboy named Luke Carter sat slumped on the edge of his porch, hat pulled low, bottle in hand, drowning in the kind of silence that eats at a man's soul. It had been 2 years since the fever took his wife and unborn son, 2 years since he'd spoken more than a handful of words to another living soul, 2 years since he'd felt anything but the dull ache of loss. Until the night she came stumbling through the mesquite, barefooted, clothes torn, hair matted with dust and blood, collapsing at the bottom of his steps, her lips trembling as she looked up at him with wide, pleading eyes and whispered, barely loud enough for the wind to carry it, "Please, help me." And in that instant something deep inside Luke, the part of him he thought had died with his family, snapped awake like a wolf hearing the cry of its mate. He dropped the bottle, knelt beside her, and when his calloused fingers brushed the welted bruises along her arms and the raw rope burns on her wrists, his mind filled in the pieces she was too broken to say, but the fire in his gut didn't need a story, just a direction. He carried her inside, laying her gently on the bed his wife once slept in, covering her with the quilt his mother made, and when she stirred, mumbling about men in the canyon, and "They'll kill me if they find me," Luke's jaw tightened. Because the law in these parts was a joke, the sheriff was in those men's pockets, and decent folks learned to turn away if they wanted to stay breathing. But Luke had already decided he wasn't decent anymore, just dangerous. Over the next hours, as the oil lamp cast soft shadows on her face, he cleaned her cuts, brought her water, and coaxed her name, Emily, from trembling lips, learning she'd been taken from a wagon train, held by a gang who sold women like cattle, until she escaped under cover of night, and when she finally fell asleep, clutching his shirt like a lifeline, Luke stepped outside, the cold desert wind biting at his skin as he saddled his horse, loaded his rifle, and rode into the black to hunt men who thought they owned her. The trail was easy to follow, tracks cutting into soft earth, a half-burned campfire still warm. And before dawn, Luke was crouched in the rocks above a canyon where 6 of them slept, their laughter still echoing faint from the night before. He didn't feel fear, only that strange, steady calm that had taken root the moment Emily spoke to him. And when the first man rose to piss, Luke put a bullet through his chest, the crack of the rifle waking the others into a chaos they never recovered from. Because Luke Carter wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for someone who'd asked him to, and that's the kind of fight a man like him never loses. By sunrise, the canyon was quiet except for the crows, and Luke rode back with Emily's few stolen belongings and the promise that no one would ever lay a hand on her again. Over the next weeks, she healed, sometimes waking in the night with a scream that tore him in two. But each time he was there, holding her until the shaking stopped, telling her she was safe, and slowly, her eyes began to lose that hunted look. Folks in town whispered when Luke brought her in for supplies, the men looking away, the women offering her bread and a touch on the arm, and though the sheriff tried to remind Luke about minding his business, one hard look from him shut that talk down fast. Spring came, painting the valley green again, and one morning Emily stood on the porch in a clean dress Luke had bought her, the wind catching her hair, and she smiled, a real smile, the kind that makes a man believe maybe God hasn't turned his back after all. And Luke realized she hadn't just walked into his life to be saved, she'd come to save him too. Together they rebuilt the ranch, her laughter slowly replacing the hollow silence, and though neither spoke of the night she first appeared, they both knew it was the turning point. The moment a broken cowboy and a hunted woman chose to fight for something bigger than their pain. And to all who crossed that dusty stretch of land now, the sight of the tall rancher and the woman by his side was a quiet warning. Some people you don't mess with, because they've already lost everything once, and they'll make damn sure it never happens again. And friend, if stories like this stir something in your heart, if you believe in grit, redemption, and the kind of love forged in fire, then saddle up and subscribe, because out here in the Wild West, the next tale might just be the one you never forget.